Okay, in this video, I'm going to show you how to shape everything to a car. This is not a tutorial. There's just too much stuff to teach about basic Blender things. This video is just a way for you to look over my shoulder and kind of get an idea of how I manipulate the mesh so that it can fit the CarX car properly. So, you want to learn how to reshape body kits. First and foremost, this is bad. Reshaping a model that is already set into triangles to fit into something else is not proper modeling. You would either make the body kit again from scratch or just find a better model. But I admit I am in the same position as you. If the model is already made, why not make it fit? Let's hammer it into place. Now look, you're watching this video because you want to go into the next steps with Blender. I'm going to assume that you have at least some knowledge of how to use Blender. If you get lost, I have my hotkeys overlay down here. You can see the keys that I'm pressing. I'm not going to explain every single key press that I'm doing. I will be explaining the tools that I use and why I use them. But for everything else, if you get lost, please just look in this corner here. Alright, I'm going to start with the side skirts because they're the easiest. We are going to start by using X-ray mode so we can see things a bit better. We are going to highlight the entire side and delete. And now I'm going to add a modifier, mirror. So now when we're editing both sides of the car, we only need to move one set of vertices. First I get it into the general location. For the S13, you want to pay respects to this body line. That's typically where the top of the side skirts go. So we're going to have to bring that one up a bit. We're going to be respecting the bottom of the door line. So we will have to reshape that length along there. And it looks like we might have to scale things up a little bit compared to the stock skirts. Oh, that's actually not too bad. Yeah. So we won't need to reshape the bottom of the skirt too much. Now, when it comes to reshaping kits, we want to make as few modifications as possible, because if we keep moving things back and forth, we'll notice that our body lines are no longer straight and uniform. Anyway, I'm going to start with the front of the skirt and work my way back, just so I can keep everything kind of in line. I want my transform pivot point to be active element for starters. We won't worry about snapping just yet. And the first thing I want to show is proportional editing. This means that we can grab a couple of vertices, move the things around it. I'm using the scroll wheel to change this circle size. And as you can see, rather than dragging all of these out manually, we can just grab, so I'm aiming for kind of like the point that's furthest away or at the peak of this sort of radius that's going on. And by using proportional edit, I can choose to move a smaller or larger radius and kind of bring this arch in so it meets with this kind of flatter line of the CarX body. And that maintains the shape as best as I can while also meeting the body line. Next thing I want to introduce is the shear tool. So what I want to do is this top line is kind of slanted downwards compared to the original body. I kind of want it to drag upwards. So I'm going to click on one of these vertices, and that's going to act as my active vertice. Then using C select, I'll expand that selection to everything else along this top line. And using proportional edit, we'll drag up the vertices below it. And holding shift, I'll just slowly drag that up. Adjusting with scroll wheel at the same time. And that is meeting that body line a bit better. Looks like this stock mesh doesn't have very straight edges there, but that's okay. I'll just drag those out a bit. So this mesh that I'm using isn't too perfect. We can see that the body line wants to go down this way, but then this group of vertices is sort of like jagged. So I'm going to turn off proportional edit, and we'll go back into shear tool, set our active element there, and we'll shear it back. And now we'll try moving it outwards. Shear it a bit more. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Looking at how this is going to go, I think the best course of action will be to line up the back of the skirt at the top, and then I'll come back in and fix up this body line later. Just like on the front of the skirt, I don't think I need to shear this part though, but I do need to kind of straighten it up. Now I'm quite fortunate in that all of these lines running across this way are perfectly straight. So that works in my favor. I can grab this big clump here and move it all backwards until the rear arch kind of meets up. Might just bring that forward a bit. And now I'll start working on this top edge here. We'll proportion edit it to be right about there. Doesn't look like I need to shear it. Actually, I will, just to be... Looks like it needs a little bit of shearing. So we'll shear it down to kind of meet that body line a bit better. Now, this front section here, I'm wondering if now would be the good time to bring this body line up into the rear of the door, and then I'll fill in this radius afterwards. Yeah, let's try that. So I'm going to grab everything in this line here, because this is the lowest point at this end. We'll focus on moving that up. Yeah, I'll proportion edit. Scroll wheel it to fit. Meet that there. And it looks like it's slanted, so I'll give that a look. I'll do it a bit of a shear. A little bit more. And then move it up the rest of the way. How is that looking? That's looking pretty decent. And now I can sort of shape these kind of the same way I did the bottom of the door here. I'm going to focus on the closest point first. just so I don't mess with this line here, I'll drag this whole section forward at the same time. So I'm going to close this gap up here. I'll grab all of these again and proportion shift that. Actually, let's try with that much. Yeah, I like that better. So we're keeping that radius. Doesn't matter if it overlaps the door a little bit. It's not going to be that big of an issue. So now that we're lined up in this view, we can focus on increasing the depth of our skirt. I am liking how far it sticks out. That's okay. But the top of the skirt mesh needs to be brought in. So on this mesh in particular, there's a bit of weird folding going on. So it's best off just to delete that kind of stuff. We can safely delete some of that. Clean up the mesh a bit. And essentially what I want to do is extend this top face so it clips through the stock body. So starting there, I'm going to hold control and select. That's going to select the shortest path. I'll just drag that in. A little bit more. And now to fill in this hole, I'm going to control click there. It's going to select that sort of loop going in there, and I'll press F to fill. Now I'll start bringing in the rest of the skirt at the top, and I can afford to be lazy here. We'll just control select our way in there. Maybe grab these last two as well. And I can just shift those on the x-axis until it looks like the gap is filled. All right, I'm going to do this front part a bit differently. I'll short path select that top edge there, activate grab, shift Y to lock it in these two axes, sort of drag it up that way. Trying not to disturb this normal map here. I want these shadings to be kind of uniform. At this point, I have the option of adding another modifier, weighted normal. And this tends to iron out any of the weird shading that is happening on our normals. Yeah, you can kind of see a shadow in there. So in this case, I will keep the weighted normal. Bodyline looking there. I think I need to move this part back a bit. Yeah, that's better. Just going to double check with the body miscellaneous. Yeah, okay. So because the miscellaneous is clipping through our side skirt, we're going to have to drag it out. And now is a good time to show off rotations and how to use rotations. I'm going to set this point as my active, highlight the rest of these. Active element is our pivot point. Going back out of X-ray mode, we are going to press R to rotate. We want to rotate it. Actually, turn off proportional edit. Rotate on the X-axis And then that will bring it out while not messing with the curvature too much. That looks good. We'll do the same again for the front. Set our pivot point down below where it clips through. Grab the rest of them. Rotate on the X. Now that is bringing it out just a bit too far. So now what I'm going to do using this pivot point again is I'm going to scale it on the Y and bring it back in just slightly. Trying to match that curvature with the outside as best as I can. These verts down here probably gonna have to be moved by themselves. That sort of messes with the curvature of the skirt just a little bit, but not so much that it's going to be an eyesore. This still looks pretty good. I am happy with this side skirt. Very good. Now it's on to the front bumper. Okay, very first thing, same as the side skirt, we are going to delete half of the mesh. Add a mirror, and now we only have to edit one side. Now I'm going to turn the miscellaneous back on and roughly position this in here. In this case, I'm going to be lining up this body line again, same as the side skirts. And kind of lining up this vertical line here. Same as before. Oh, look at all these sharps. That's quite odd. I don't think I need any of these to be sharp. So I'm going to go ahead and clear those sharps. Edge, clear sharp. Right, okay. That'd be why. Face orientation mode can be found in this menu. Face orientation. Blue is outside, we want blue. Red is inside, we don't want red just yet. So we can select all these red faces. Actually, I should be able to select all, Alt-N, recalculate outside. Ta-da! Blue faces all over. That's what we want. Now, I am a fan of this shading as opposed to this shading, and that's because this sharp in here is creating that sort of hard edge. So because they are sharing similar geometry, I'm going to, in edges, going to select all of these edges here and clear their sharp as well. And that makes the shading sort of match up between them. Looks good. I will be keeping the sharps on these edges though. I think they look better. Maybe getting rid of these sharps in here. We'll see how that looks. Yeah, that looks better. This quick favorites menu here, very handy if you want to assign something to your quick favorites. You can find it in whatever menu in here. Right click that option and there'll be add to quick favorites there. Makes everything much quicker to edit things. That is looking good. Now we can get to reshaping. So all of this looks pretty uniform. It's running parallel with the CarX body. So I'm going to grab just grab an arbitrary amount of faces here. Trying to keep a nice straight line on my selection. Might actually deselect a group in here because we can see that it starts to come in closer here. Yep. Okay, and now I'll proportion edit. Drag in on the X. That looks decent. We'll have to match up this wheel arch now. We'll just drag these out with proportion edit. Might actually get away with not using proportion. Actually we will. We'll use proportion so these lines here are going to maintain their curvature. We'll scale it up a little bit till it just goes past. And that looks good. Looks like there's some clipping on top here. So I'm going to turn off proportion edit and just move these by themselves. Might need to grab that one too. Yep. That looks pretty good. We can already see that those few movements we did around here has already kind of messed up this body line. So we'll just grab these proportion. Make it so it's only dragging out the vertice above it. And we'll try and restore that body line. That looks decent, I think. Yeah, that looks better. Might just do the same for there. Bring this one out just a little bit. How are things looking this way? Yeah, that's pretty good. Okay. So the next part is going to be meeting up below the headlights. And there's a nice trick that I know to make that process easier. We'll go back to our stock front bumper. And that provides us with a nice line of vertices that are already matched up to the body where we're trying to go to. Let's see. So I guess I want to grab the vertices from here upwards. So we'll start down here using control to grab the shortest path. We'll go to our center line. And with these vertices selected, I'm going to Shift D to duplicate them, click in place, using P to separate that selection. And now we have a row of vertices. I'm just going to delete this edge so we get rid of that face that we don't need. At this point, I'm going to duplicate the bumper that I'm working on, hide the duplicate, and that's going to give us a backup just in case we screw things up. Now we reach one of many unfortunate truths about reshaping to CarX car models. This bodyline here and our bumper are completely misshaped. We need to bring up this entire ledge here to meet with the headlights, but at the same time, that's going to bring this ridge above this bump on the CarX body. Nothing lines up, and this is exactly why you should learn how to make body kits from scratch. The only way we can overcome this sort of shit is to hammer it in place, and it's gonna look dodgy, but it's gonna make our body kit. That's just the truth of it. So the first part I'm gonna have to do is bring this edge outwards. I'll see what I can do with a shear. We'll turn off proportion for this one. We'll drag it out like this. Obviously that fucks with the body line somewhat. Actually, I'll see what it looks like with a move. A proportional move on X. It's probably not going to be that nice. I think what I'll try is to use that as my active, grab these points, and then I'll scale it on the X to meet it. Try and match that body curve. That is not too bad, in my opinion. I might just bring this bottom row back in a bit, scaling it in. I think that's as good as it's going to get. Some of these vertices are not in a good shape though. It doesn't look too bad. So now I'm going to move that back a bit. I think now I'm going to try and meet this top lip up with the headlights a bit better. So I'm going to get rid of these two rows. Maybe that bit as well. We'll get rid of them. Short path, select our top edge. While we have that selected, I'm going to clear those sharps. We don't need them. grab this top edge now and proportion on. I'm going to meet those a bit closer just so there's a bit of a gap for us to seal afterwards. Before I close up this taper of this gap, I need to bring this body line down to kind of meet with that bump. Just grab those. I think I might grab all of these. Set my active to there. Let's give it a shear, proportion shear, see what that does. That's kind of okay. You can see what I mean by making all of these small changes. We can see the geometry is getting a bit warped. It's not looking as nice as it did originally. Now I'll close up this tapered gap a bit. See how it's uniform all the way along here and then starts to taper out. Some of these verts are looking kind of funky though. We'll just move these by themselves. Okay. I can start with that one, and then where the taper stops, I'll shortest loops like that. So it's got all these faces selected. Portion, shear, and we'll try and make that gap uniform all the way along. That's looking better. We can start to see all this stuff going on, but that's okay. We can fix that up later, I think. Okay. Now comes the part where this line we cut out before is going to come into handy. First of all, I'm going to grab all of this and delete it. Clean this up a little bit. That might be okay. We'll select that line we made earlier. I think I can get rid of them using edge as our snap to. I'm going to extrude a little bit, snapping it to just above where the new bumper is going. And now I will hold shift, select that, Control J, and now the two meshes are one. Now it's time to fill up this gap. I think I'll start with selecting these edges here, then selecting these adjacent edges. Control E, bridge edge loops. That looks decent. And then for this ridge here, I'm going to select these ones and do F for fill. I'll select these dots because I want the edge to run through there, and I'll use J to do so. Let's add a weighted normal modifier. Yep, that looks good. So if we've restored or continued that sort of body line going through there, things get a little funky through here. So I might come back and clean up the geometry on the bumper just so it's not acting so weird. Anyway, I'll grab those ones. Actually, I'll have to do this in edge mode because I'm going to do a bridge edge loop. Selecting those edges, these edges will bridge. And that fills in that gap nicely. That's not too bad. Now, because there's a lot more vertices on this new bumper compared to the old lip, what I'll do is I'll grab these top edges of that and I'm going to subdivide, and we'll make 2 cuts, and what that looks like is now we have all of these verts. So with those still selected, I'll start a new selection on the new bumper, grabbing that top and Control E bridge. How does that look? Little bit nasty there. So I'm going to bring that out a bit to try and fix up that shading. Don't think there's going to be too much to do with that just because of how low poly the CarX model is. I could probably bring it out more. Try and match that low poly amount. How's that? Yeah, I think that's as good as I'm gonna get it. Alright, time to fix up this geometry. Okay, I've just done a bit more reshaping through here to try and fix up these body lines. Now what I'm going to try is I'm going to delete all of these faces through here, kind of connecting the top lip with the front of the bumper. I'll delete those. And then I'll reselect the bottom of this lip here. And also selecting this top lip here. And then I'll bridge these. And chances are Blender will do a better job of computing how these edges should look. And now we can see that the shading through here does look a lot better. Now this bumper didn't come with indicators, and I would like some. So, grabbing that inner loop there with an Alt click, I will Shift G to duplicate, click in place, P to separate. Going to name that separation indicator. You'll also notice that it maintains the modifiers that were on the front bumper. Tabbing in, I'll select all, press E to extrude, click in place, S to scale, scale it inwards so it gives some depth. I think I will scale it on the X back out a bit. Moving on the Y to give it a bevel. With these edges selected, I'm going to... Do I want to fill or do I want to sharp? We'll try a fill and then Control B to add an actual bevel. That looks pretty good. Yeah. Cool. Those will become our indicators later. I reckon that is it for the front bumper. I won't worry about the shading in there, that's barely noticeable. But yeah, everything else looks pretty good. Onwards to the rear bumper. Actually, before I get ahead of myself, better check the body line. Yep, looks like the front bumper and side skirt are nice and level at the bottom. That is good. Didn't even have to try and go for that. It just happened magically. Yay! How about our front view? Side skirts come out a fair bit more, but I think that's how this car goes. Alright, rear bumper. Same deal. Going to roughly line up that vertical edge there. The little corner of this body line here. Actually, we'll try and match this top and bottom groove as best we can. Round about there. Yep, that's nice and flush with the top. For the rear bumper, you've got a choice to make. You can either keep the bumper as a whole rather than cutting it in half, and this will keep your exhaust port cut out. Thing is, you have to edit both sides at the same time in the same proportions. This can be a bit misleading. Instead, I am going to duplicate this bumper, hide it for now, and I will be removing the half with the exhaust cutout. And I'll be putting it back in later. We've got this copy of the bumper, so I can use this as a reference. The rear bumper is going to be exactly the same as the front bumper, so I'm going to skip recording this part, but it's going to be the same sort of deal. We have to respect this body line here, matching up this line here, and using a bridge edge loop to fit this mesh to the shape of the CarX body nicely. So just quickly on the rear bumper, I've got the CarX edge up on top there already, and I've kind of shaped this bumper to kind of meet it. It's kind of ready to stitch, but instead of using this group of verts, I'm going to grab these top two rows on the new bumper. I'm going to delete them. Going to grab my the CarX edge up to about there. I'm going to extrude it down to form most of the shape. How's that looking side on? Not too bad. And I'll also extrude another one very slightly outwards. Now I need to fix up this edge here, so I'm going to subdivide that one. That one can build to there. I'll subdivide this one, and grabbing that vertice, I can double G to trace along that edge. Grab that short section, fill that one there. Now I'll grab this top edge, and I'm going to subdivide it, I think. Yeah, I'll subdivide it once. Got it selected. I'll grab this bottom one here, and then I'll bridge. Shade auto smooth. Bit of a funky shading going on, so we'll add a weighted normal. Why is it doing this? It's inside out. That's all good. We can grab these faces here and flip them. There we go, the shading's smooth. We've got a nice sharp bevel. We can increase that bevel using double G to shift it upwards. And that kind of edits that shading a bit as well. So that weird shading through here on those faces, it's kind of subtle, but it will certainly be noticeable in game. We can fix it up by kind of reducing these faces, vertices that we've got. Using M, when I select the first one, shift select the second one, press M, merge at last, and that'll bring that center one to merge with that one. And that shading looks better. Now, as on our rear bumper, we can see this little gap at the top. This is the same on the stock rear bumper. And this gap is filled in with some body miscellaneous. This small section of miscellaneous isn't part of the body by default. We will have to L-select part of it. We'll actually get rid of that so we can go ahead and separate that selection. And we can give it a mirror modifier. So now when we export our bumper, this part of the miscellaneous will come with it. And that nice little gap will be filled in. Now it's time for the exhaust cutout. I'm going to start by duplicating the bumper I've been working on just so I've got a backup. And because obviously I need it to not be mirrored, I'm going to apply my mirror modifier. Okay. So the way I'm going to make this exhaust cutout is terrible. It is the worst of the worst, but it works. Just don't let anyone who models properly catch you doing this. We're going to start by making a cube. Try and match that height. This one can come this way a bit. That's about there. Now using edge and X-ray mode, we're going to highlight these two edges here. We're going to apply a bevel using Control B. Give it some segments, about 5 should do. I'm going to adjust this shape, make it 6. We'll adjust this shape so it kind of matches the old archway. Go this way. Okay, that should do. Need to make sure our rotations and scales are 0s and 1s on our cube. Going to bring back the bumper that I'm working on. Going to select it, add a modifier for Boolean, drag that above weighted normal modifier if you've got one. Going to eyedropper onto the cube. It's going to look a bit weird. Try union. Maybe that works better. If I toggle the visibility on the cube, that is what it looks like. So I'm happy with that. I'm going to Control A on Boolean. Now I can start editing the mesh again. Now I'm going to start with grabbing this edge here, just above the bottom. Grab this edge here, and I'm going to extrude on the Y. I'm going to scale Y0, and I'll give it a bit of shear on the Y-axis. And this gives us a nice straight edge on the backside. We might have to give it a shear that way. And bring it down. Now what I'm going to do is, because there is a line that runs along the bottom of the lip, I want it to continue up here to make sure my faces still have nice normals. So using loop cut, click and drag until it kind of meets the same distance. And then I will grab these edges and fill, grab those edges and fill, and the same on this side. Hello, what's this? Huh, weird geometry. Let's fill that, merge that actually. Merge that there. That looks pretty good, except there's a bit of funny shading here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab here, select all the way around. Do a bevel. We're going to reduce this down to 1. Try 5. And that looks pretty decent. It's sharper than the original bumper or the original cutout. This one has nicer geometry because it was made from scratch. But because we're butchering the mesh, this will do just fine. Now for the bonnet. On some cars, you will need to grab this strip of the faces from the miscellaneous model. On the S13, this one in particular stays where it is. So be prepared to include that in your bonnet if you happen to work on a car that needs it. I've made the decision that because the last time I did this bonnet was a pain in my ass, it was fitted very poorly, and it's looking like it's going to do the same again here. What I'm going to do is I've done another dump of the car with the stock body instead. And what I'm going to do, I'll split that off. Essentially, I'm going to grab the vents from this bonnet, make a hole in the stock bonnet, and I'll splice the two together. I think it's going to be the easiest way to achieve what I want. I'm going to make this part a time lapse, so. So there you have it. The bonnet is nice and fitted on all four sides. Where the seam is where I merged the two models together looks pretty good. There's a slight bit of shading going on, but it's really nothing I'm worried about. That should be fine. That is basically it for the more difficult to shape parts. I'm just going to choose a matte caps lighting. And this way we can really see if there's any major imperfections with what we've done. All the surfaces seem nice and smooth. Front bumper looks good. Little bit of funkiness where the lip joins underneath the headlights, but that's fine by me. The bonnet is a bit weird, but not to the point where it's going to be a massive standout. I'll probably sit here and mess with these vertices a little bit more. I'll move these one by one to try and smoothen things out a bit.